Let's rock and roll. This is the very talented Katie Bussey. And if anybody can solve a puzzle about Gradebook, it's Katie. She's my go-to with Google Sync and standards based. So thank you, Katie, for joining us.
Absolutely. I am a super geek that loves solving puzzles. So I love this stuff. So Katie Bussey, I work at the ESC as a tech facilitator, but my background is in middle school science. And so I've worked at several of our middle schools before this. So was a Synergy geek in the classroom, and now I'm a Synergy geek for many classrooms. So I'll do kind of like just a general overview, just kind of some of the common questions that I'm hearing and kind of common workflow. And then after that, it's open for questions. I think this is scheduled until 2:50, but I'm happy to stick around as long as people have questions. So if you've got a long list of stuff to work through, hang on, and I will happily try to solve as many issues as I can. So I have a demo gradebook here. This is actually one of your teachers, but this is in our sandbox or play environment. And so don't worry, I'm not actually adding in scores. None of these students are going to see these pieces. But in a standards-based gradebook, when you're creating an assignment, most of the pieces are the same. You're going to give it whatever assignment name you want to. You can set the due dates and the assignment dates. You can turn it on or off whether or not the parents and students can see it in the portal. You can also turn on or off only when scored. This is, I think, potentially going to be more useful in standards-based gradebooks. I've seen some groups creating a recent evidence. And so it's just kind of like a placeholder of an assignment. And if I turn on show only when scored, then what's going to happen is the only people that will see that assignment are students that actually have a score in that piece. So you potentially could have something that's recent evidence. I'm going to say that I want to use recent evidence all trimester. So I'm going to throw the due date near the end of the trimester, maybe end of November. And then what's going to happen is that's just going to live in your gradebook. You'll always be able to enter a score there, but a student's only going to see it if you used it. So a situation might be student doesn't do so great on a quiz, but in overhearing a conversation in class, you hear them explain the concept to another student. You're like, wow, they've really got it. You could go into that recent evidence score and add one in there. So kind of an underutilized setting when you're setting up an assignment. You can create one that the students will only see if you, the teacher, types in a score there. All right, I'm going to go down and pick a couple of standards that go with this guy as well. As I'm selecting the standards here on the right-hand side, notice that the ones that I've clicked on turn gray and have that blue selected mark. We had a couple of teachers last year run into the situation where they would click on it and it didn't seem to actually stick. It needs to turn gray and have that blue selected mark. So for some teachers, the first time they hit it, it seems to be fine. And for other teachers, for whatever reason, it takes a second click. So make sure that the standards that you want to attach to that benchmark actually have that kind of grade selected option. And then my own personal workflow is, as I scroll back up to go up and save my assignment, is to double check that here those assignments that I selected are actually listed under those assignment standards. That's telling me, yep, Synergy is sticking those 3 benchmarks to that one new assignment that I am making. Other pieces in the gradebook work as they typically do. So for your grading periods, you'd select those trimester. And if you want this assignment to exist in more than one of your class, you could select multiple sections in here as well. If you have any resources that go with the assignment, so you don't want to print out the worksheet for the bazillionth time, you can also attach a resource right in here. It can either be a file that you upload from your computer, or it could be a web address. So if you want to send them out to a Google Doc, that's an option as well. So some cool pieces that we can set up within the assignment itself. So I'm going to go ahead and save. And it's going to send me back to the standards view in my gradebook. At first, it doesn't look like anything changed because I already had those 3 standards. But now if I click on this arrow that pops out and I can see what assignments are nested under that benchmark, I can see that demo assignment that I was just creating as some of you guys were popping in. And then this recent evidence one, which is the one that I just created, is also sitting in there as well. So both of those assignments were aligned to this benchmark here. Now for these assignments, I aligned multiple benchmarks. So if I click over on my next one here and pop it out, I can see that that exists under that benchmark piece as well. So this is one of the new pieces with standards-based. Traditionally, if I make one assignment, I would only see it once. In a standards-based gradebook, you're going to see it nested under each benchmark that it aligns with. So that demo assignment, I've got it tagged into three different benchmarks, and so I'm going to see it all 3 times if I pop all of those out. So I'm going to pause for just a second to see if there's any specific questions about creating the assignments, and then I'll get into the piece with scoring, which will then include that missing comment code piece. Questions about assignment creation? Okay, hopefully that one should be fairly straightforward. Try to get it so that you're just seeing the standards that you're going to need for that course. If you teach multiple different classes, you have more than one prep, the classes that are using a traditional gradebook are set up to set up that way. So you'll add assignments. You won't have to worry about attaching standards. The courses that are set up as standards-based, it'll be turned on in those only. So you might be in a situation where you're seeing both of those gradebooks. Or if you're in a situation where you have multiple preps and you're using multiple standards-based gradebooks, you'll see the standards specific to each course when you're in each of those gradebooks. So you won't see a list of all of them. You'll see just the ones that are specific to that individual course. Right. As far as scoring assignments go, a couple of options. You can score within this screen, and this is where a lot of our teachers tend to work in Synergy. I can just type in scores on a standards-based gradebook. We have it set up to use those proficiency scales. And so those proficiency scales are in half-point increments. So if I'm looking at the scale, I'm looking at Eleanor's work, and I'm going, oh, okay, she's at least got the standards, so she's at least at a 3. I'm looking at the description of that 3.5, and I'm like, oh, she might almost be a 3.5. I don't know, I'm feeling indecisive. I want to go a 3.25. If I try to enter that into Synergy, Synergy is going to go, nope, you have to pick one of the pieces on that proficiency scale. So you've got to decide, is Eleanor at a 3 or is she at a 3.5? And pick one of those scores that are actually in that proficiency scale score type. So I'm going to go in and say, yep, you know what, she's got it plus a little bit. So I'm going to give her a 3.5 and go ahead and save. And for this gradebook, this benchmark is misbehaving for me. I was doing this just a couple of days ago when I was in here. Our test environment has some quirks, and our production, what you guys are working in, has some quirks too. What should be happening is that these scores should update here in the benchmark, and so that Synergy would be taking, oh, interesting. Synergy should be taking those scores and populating it with that most recent score. So we're gonna pretend Synergy was behaving and those worked as expected. However, that does show you kind of a neat trick that if at any point you're looking at a student's progression, and maybe they were doing, you know, a 2, a 3, a 3, a 4, and they were like, okay, they're getting it, they got it, and then you give a test, you just knew that they had a bad day, something rough happened, they came in late and frazzled, they've got a low score. You as the teacher always have the ability to override and say, you know what, I don't want to take that most recent score because I don't think that really truly represents what the student knows. You can click in that benchmark and actually type in the score at that spot. So you have that ability. So one spot to enter scores is right within this screen. And this works well if you have one assignment or one piece of evidence that's attached to one benchmark, if it's just a one-to-one, typing in your scores and then moving on. Fast forward to the end of the unit. If you have, you know, maybe a multiple page assessment where one page is on one benchmark, you flip and there's another page on a second one. So you've got multiple scores or multiple pieces within one assignment. Another place to enter scores, if you click on the assignment name, you can go into the enter scores screen. And this is going to bring up a slightly different view of the assignment. I can see that demo assignment. I can see that I set it up for the proficiency scales. I can see which standards I attached it to. But the piece that I find handy is that next to the assignment's name, that demo assignment, there's a little pop-out caret similar to what the benchmarks look like on the standards page, where I can pop out and actually see the 3 standards or the 3 benchmarks that were attached to this one assignment. And when I'm in here, I can go in and select and go, all right, I'm going to look at Benjamin's demo assignment and go, all right, on that first benchmark, he's really got it. He's at a 4. You know, but he's really not understanding that second piece yet. So he's at a 2. And then for that third one, maybe he's also at a 2 there. And so this allows me, instead of giving like an overall score of a B, which doesn't really tell me where Benjamin's understanding is or is not, I can, both me as the teacher and Ben and his parents can take a look at that and go, all right, he's really understanding this volume of pyramids, but these other 2 benchmarks he's struggling with a little bit and at a 2. So just a different view where you can add assignments in for the assignment. Your comment codes live in here as well, so you can pick from a drop-down, and these work in conjunction with the scores, so they can both exist. So I might put on here that it was late, and so then when Ben or his parents are looking at the scores, they're going to see the 4, the 2, and the 2, but they're also going to see that comment code that he completed that piece late. Other thing that I really like about this particular screen or this way of entering scores is that there's this fill down arrow. So if most of my students really understood the volume of pyramids, I could click on this green arrow and now it's filled down, and so that all of the students have a 4. And then I can go back in and go, all right, here are my students that specifically need a slightly different, a different grade. So those fill down arrows are nice when most of your students are either at like that 3 level and you just have to change a couple of them. Also works well if you're using comment codes a lot, where you can potentially put that, yep, they completed it at that level that was expected. That's right where they should be at this point. You can fill down and then go in and pick slightly different comment codes for any students that might be at a different spot. So, a couple of different screens or ways to enter scores into the gradebook. Yeah, give it just a second. And there we go. And so this is where I can see I only put in scores across the board for Benjamin and then didn't put scores in for these assignments for these other students. So you're seeing this CL, which was that comment code of completed at the level expected. But for up here for Benjamin, for typing in that score and that comment code, both of those are in there. If you as a teacher are not seeing comment codes, even though you either typed them in, so you can just, as long as Synergy knows what you're talking about, that code's attached to a comment, it should let you type right within there. So right here is my CL. If you're not seeing those, there's actually a spot where you can turn these on or off from teacher view. Up here in your filters or options, about halfway down the options list is the option to come back, show comment codes. And so if that is deselected or if that box is empty, you're not going to see those comment codes in there, even though they are in there. And so that would be one thing to check if you're entering comment codes and you think that they're disappearing. Make sure that box is checked so that you can see that, yep, that actually attached in that piece. So that's one spot to check that. Another spot, and this is useful, and so now, Casey, this is getting back to what is the student actually seeing. I'm going to take a look at Ben's student view so I can see what this looks like in his gradebook, and you as teachers have the ability to do this in your seating chart. When you click on the picture of one of your students, a whole list of options is going to pop up. One of the options is student view, and that's going to give you the ability to actually view what that student is viewing. I think Benjamin was in my first hour. And this is super useful if you get either a student saying, hey, I'm not seeing this, or if you get a parent email asking about why does the gradebook look like this, or what am I seeing? Sometimes what you're looking at in your gradebook and what a parent is communicating either over the phone or through email don't quite seem to match. This is a nice way to actually go in and be like, okay, what is the parent or student seeing? So for Benjamin, where I put in some scores, clicking on his picture brings up a list, and one of these options is student view. Okay, so again, you want to view what the student is viewing, so you're going to pick student view. Don't click on gradebook, that's not going to take you where you think it is. So I'm going to go to student view. And this should load kind of the intro page to the students, to the student view. Students and parents see the same thing. The only difference is that if a parent has multiple children in the district, up here where we see Benjamin's name and picture, I would click on that and I could pick the other siblings and toggle between the different the different views of the different grade books. So in this, I can actually see what the student is seeing. One of the options here on the left-hand side is Gradebook. And so now when I click on that, it's going to hopefully load, show me all of the classes that Benjamin is in. And then from there, I'm able to go in and actually click and individually see what the kiddo is looking at. So I was working in a geometry gradebook, so I'm going to go ahead and click on the geometry gradebook. And because this is a standards-based class, this is going to automatically go to the standards view side. Yes, absolutely, you can, Casey. So yeah, this starts over here on the standards view side. This is showing me that overall, based on the scores that I've entered for Benjamin, he's at a 4.0A. It shows me these benchmarks that I've entered, that I've attached assignments to. The one piece that's a little bit different here is that in order for the students and parents to see the assignments that are attached to each of those benchmarks, they can either click on the benchmark, and that's going to show just the ones that are attached to that one benchmark, or they can click on expand all, and that's going to pop open all of them. They'll be able to see all the assignments that are attached to that piece. So in this example, this first benchmark, we've got a couple of 4s that are leading up to a 4. And then down below, we can see these other marks and these other comment codes. So this is where you would check to see, is it actually showing as missing for the kiddo, or is that comment code seeming not to stick? So if you're running across this, if you're typing in missing and it's not holding and the student's not seeing it on their end, make sure to reach out to myself or Daryl, and we can help troubleshoot and try to figure out what's going on with either your gradebook or that kiddo's gradebook. So this is what the parents and students see when they check their standards-based gradebook. Attached to this down at the bottom, there's a legend. This is super generic language for what the proficiency scale is showing. So a 4 is showing that I've mastered the learning versus a 3 is I understand it. 2 is I've got the basics. So it's a very kind of generic language that could be applied to any of the standards that any of our courses are using. If you have student-friendly proficiency scales or proficiency scales that are in more student parent friendly language, I'd recommend sharing them so that your students and parents know, hey, if I'm at that 2, what do I need to do to get to that 3 to show you that I do understand that standard? Or if I'm at a 3 and I want to get to a 4, what's that next step there? And teachers have different ways of disseminating that information. It could be through emails, it could be through the Google Classroom. You can attach resources right in Synergy itself. So I had mentioned on the assignment, there's that resources tab where you can attach pieces. That's another way that you can share information about the course with your students and their parents. So that is, let's see if I can find where my presentation or where my Synergy went. That's the student view side of things within the gradebook. So I'm going to go ahead and pause here. So I went through how to enter or create a assignment, how do we score that assignment, and then what do the students and parents see on their side of things. Any questions about those 3 pieces? All right, I'm either talking super fast and I've lost all you guys, or I'm just covering it so phenomenally.
So well, that's the real answer. It's done so well, Katie. We have no questions at this point. Folks, this is our opportunity to tap the shoulder of a real expert in gradebook here.
Sorry, is this question and answer time?
Yeah, there is one. Yes, yep. Let's
we are very math specific here, so I'm gonna let other people ask questions because we have a very like CCA gradebook specific couple questions that other people I don't think it's gonna matter to.
Got it. Okay. One thing I do want to mention to the group, and there will be a more formal communication coming from either your TALs and or Daryl, but we are discovering that our benchmarks that have been weighted at a fraction. So like some of our supporting benchmarks are at a 0.5. I think our PE classes, there are a lot that are in that situation as well. So some are weighted as a 1, some are weighted as a 0.5. There was an update over the weekend to Synergy that seems to have broken our 0.5 standards. And so if you have a standard that's supposed to be giving one of those fractional weights and you're noticing that it's not working, that is something that Synergy is aware of and we're trying to get fixed. And so for right now, it's just those 0.5 standards are acting kind of funny. Most of our math standards are weighted at a 1.0, so that shouldn't affect you guys. Our health standards are mostly at a 1.0, so shouldn't affect you as much. The standards that are affected are the supporting benchmarks in math, the behavior benchmark in reading, and then some of our PE benchmarks are weighted as those fractions as well. So if it's acting a little funny, that's potentially one of the reasons why. All right, other questions, and this can be as specific or as general as you guys want.
Hey, Katie, I'm Kari. I'm with the ESL department, and I know we've gone back and forth with weird things in our grade book and standards loaded or standards changed. And I think I'm just at the point where I need to set up my grade book. And Mandy was saying that she thought when we met yesterday, she thought things were ready to go. So mine is just real specific, like here's my screen. What are the steps that I need to do? Are the standards ready for the EL courses?
So what I'll mention for high school EL, the way that they were loaded in initially was by domain. So it was reading, writing, speaking, listening. And so that is currently how they're loaded and set up. I know there's been some emails kind of circulating if you want to leave it as those 4 domains, or do we want to break it into substrands. Yeah, so it would be reading for comprehension and reading vocabulary, or I don't know exactly what they are, but broken into pieces. So if you're moving forward with just those 4 big domains, you are ready to go. The next step would be following through. I think Mandy shared the setting your final grade config, and then a doc that essentially, no, not yet. Okay, all right, I can share that.
Yes, would you please? I know it's probably redundant for the math people here because they've been doing standards for a while, but this is all like brand spanking new for us. And then there's all those pull downs and substrands, and it just like I didn't want to touch it until you guys in the district had cemented everything in. Now it sounds like you guys are ready to go.
Yeah. And I would say still pause, because I know that there was an email, and I don't know if you're looped in on that. There was one more email that came out today that was saying, wait, I really want to break this one up. And so I'm going to share that with you, but I would say hang tight. And I'm hoping to touch base with Mandy again tomorrow just to finalize, are we going with those 4? Or are we breaking them into substrands for you guys?
Okay. So just wait with my grade book then?
Yeah. Yep. You can do this first step. So I'm going to send you how to set your final grade config. You can do that now. That's
okay. Could you do that? Yeah. Mm-hmm. How do I do my final grade config?
There we go. So I am going to quick copy this link, but I'll leave this up on the screen for just a second. The last piece, or the one piece that all of our standards-based folks need to do. Traditionally, Synergy is using a scale type called Genesis grading. That's a percentage-based scale. And so it's looking at like a 3 out of 4 would be 75%, which traditionally would be a C. We don't want our 3s to be at a C, because that doesn't jive with our standards-based grading. Setting this final grade config to the 4.0 scale is what's going to make that change in Synergy. So I'm going to email you. Actually, why don't I do this, since I think most of us in this group are going to be in the same boat. I'm going to pop a link to this right in the chat.
Okay. Oh, thank you, dear. Good. Yeah.
I got you.
Okay. Because then I'll open that up. All right. Got it.
Perfect. Yeah. So that's something you can do today. And if we go strands or substrands, that's going to be, yeah.
So final grade config. Okay. And then, okay.
Yeah, and then there's a quick start guide that essentially does that talks through what I just did with here's how to set up and how to score the different assignments. So I'm going to pull that up and share that with you guys as well.
Yeah, I pulled down that final grade configuration, and what it did is it pulled down a list of all my students.
So in the second, so there's 2 spots you can be looking. There's a second tab that says final grade defaults. That's the one that's going to be by grading period, so that you don't have to go through and click it for each of your kiddos.
Got it. Saw it. Okay. Good. So for me, so what I need to do is, it's all SBG 4.0 scale, correct? And then save and apply to everyone.
Save and apply to everyone. And if you have multiple sections, you can select them down below so that you don't have to go in and do this for each of your sections. You can just pick them all there straight from that page.
Yeah, I have that weird mix of half my classes yes and half my classes no.
Yeah.
So all right, got it. Okay. All right. And there's Genesis grading. Okay. Yeah, I did that chunk.
Woohoo, one thing done. Make it a little bit easier. And then I'm gonna share in the chat. Here's the so this is just kind of a generic, I call it a quick start guide that goes through kind of step by step. Here's how you add your assignments. Here's how you score your assignments.
Okay.
Yeah. So that potentially could be useful as well. And this is shared in a bunch of different spots. And I think Daryl has access to this. So it's that one.
So the EL standards, we don't have to load because for right now, you're thinking like, yeah, all of our standards got loaded, correct? In our
grade. Yep. Yeah, and right now for EL, it doesn't look like much because it's just the 4. It's reading, writing, speaking, listening. So that's that last piece we're talking about with Mandy of, are we leaving it just these 4 or are we expanding it into those substrands?
Where can I find, where could I find that, Katie? Is that under Gradebook setup?
For which standards are loaded?
Yeah, I'd like to see are they going to show our standards then?
So where you can check what's been loaded for that section, when you're in your gradebook for that section, click on the blue add assignment button and then scroll down to the standards picker, and that will actually show you what's available for that class.
Standards picker, and I see that there's just reading, writing, listening, and speaking. So for example, if this is a writing standard, it just says writing.
It just says writing. That was the discussion was, do we make it really specific because EL 1, 2, 3, like everyone had a slightly different flavor of what they were putting in listening. And with the WIDA standards changing next year, it was, do we want to make this a million different flavors or do we leave it in those four big domain buckets? So that's what I'm saying. Maybe wait just a second because I do want Mandy to give one more.
Yeah, it's here's like our proficiency scales. So I was going by our proficiency scales.
So in the very top of the scale that's in your hand, what's the word that's on the top?
It's listening. And
so
it's
that's So that's where that came from. So it would be like, okay, if you were using that proficiency scale, you would choose listening and then find which number it matches with on that scale.
And it says like recount and restate ideas to sustain and move dialogue forward. That's not going to be in our synergy. It's just going to be listening.
Yep.
Oh boy. So our proficiency scales, actually what I did is I published this, I put this on our Google Classroom so the students can see, like, here's our standards. Okay. But if I...
Yeah, so which I think that'll align well. So if the students are seeing listening, they would look at the proficiency scale. It says listening up at the top, so they can see what are those standards that I'm trying to get within that listening bucket. What are those numbers? The nice piece within standards-based grading is the titles, the descriptions, all of those pieces of the assignment still exist. So when you're creating something and you're attaching the listening standard, the listening bucket to it, you can still add as much in the description and the title to talk about what you're actually doing.
Yes.
So it's like, this is on context clues. This is on, Yeah.
That's what I'm going to do.
Okay.
That's what I'm going to do. That makes sense because like we have so many recount and restate setting, recount and restate character. Okay, that makes sense.
Perfect. Good.
Gotcha. Okay, I think I'm good.
All right.
Ha 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 ha. Until
For
I
now, email me tomorrow. It's fine. It's fine.
I know I will. All right, thank you. I'm just going to
welcome.
jump in and put an assignment in and see how it goes.
Perfect. Sounds good.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah. All right, Casey, I think we're back to you guys.
Perfect. Okay. We have several things. The first is that like comment code that you were showing us.
Mhm.
We have done that and tried that, and it doesn't work in our CCA algebra book. So I think it's some sort of a snafu in CCA because it works in my pre-calc. So can I share my screen with you? And like
Yes. Why don't I'm going to stop presenting. And Daryl, since we're going to show live gradebook info, you want to stop the recording?
Absolutely.
I don't. You can. I don't have any other grades in there.
Just even sometimes having the student names and their teachers is just, we're going to, yeah.
Okay.
All right.